95% of automatic transmissions that fail this year could have survived past 400,000 miles, not because the drivers are abusing their vehicles on a racetrack, but because they followed a catastrophic maintenance schedule invented by corporate marketing departments. Today, you will learn 12 expensive transmission traps the automotive industry uses to guarantee your gearbox self-destructs. Number 1 reveals the Japanese engineering trick that makes any transmission immortal. Let's begin. Number 12. The lifetime fluid. Lie. Starting our countdown at number 12 is the most destructive lie ever printed in a modern automotive owner's manual. It is the myth of lifetime transmission fluid. When you buy a brand new vehicle, the dealership tells you that the transmission is a sealed unit. They claim the fluid inside is engineered to last the entire life of the vehicle and you never need to check it or change it. You are being manipulated by a corporate accounting trick. Automotive manufacturers are competitive when it comes to cost of ownership metrics published by automotive magazines. To make a car look cheap to maintain on paper, manufacturers deleted transmission fluid changes from the recommended service schedule. But here's the dark secret. When a manufacturer says the life of the vehicle, they are not talking about your lifetime. They are talking about the factory warranty period. To them, the life of the vehicle is 100,000 miles. Transmission fluid is a hydraulic oil subjected to extreme mechanical shearing and blistering temperatures. Over tens of thousands of miles, the complex chemical friction modifiers inside the fluid break down. The fluid turns from a bright cherry red lubricant into a dark, burnt, acidic sludge. If you leave this degraded fluid inside your transmission past 100,000 miles, the internal clutch packs will begin to slip, burn, and disintegrate. The manufacturer knows this will happen, but they do not care, because the catastrophic failure will occur long after your factory warranty has expired. They sell you the illusion of zero maintenance, and you pay for it by buying a $4,000 replacement transmission. The lifetime fluid lie sets the trap, but the commercial machine waiting at number 11 will destroy an older gearbox in minutes. Number 11. The power. Flush catastrophe. You realize that your transmission fluid needs to be changed, so you drive into a quick lube chain store. The technician upsells you on a computerized, high-pressure transmission power flush for $200. You assume that hooking your car up to a massive cleaning machine is the best way to protect your investment. You are paying them to trigger an immediate, catastrophic internal failure. Here's the mechanical reality of an aging transmission. As your internal clutch plates wear down over time, they shed microscopic particles of friction material. This dark, gritty material circulates through the fluid and coats the inside of the transmission case in a sticky layer of varnish. While this sounds bad, that sticky varnish is holding your aging transmission together. It provides extra friction that helps the worn-out clutch packs grip each other. When the technician hooks up the high-pressure flush machine, it forces 15 quarts of heavy chemical solvents backward through your transmission lines at high velocity. This pressurized flush strips all of that sticky varnish and friction material off the internal walls. The machine dislodges massive chunks of debris which travel into the delicate aluminum valve body. These chunks act like blood clots. They jam the microscopic hydraulic spool valves and clog the tiny electronic shift solenoids. You drive the car out of the service bay, and within 50 miles, the transmission loses third gear, slips into neutral, and refuses to move. The power flush washed away the only friction material keeping your car on the road and jammed the brain of the transmission in the process. Never hook your high-mileage car up to a pressurized flush machine. The flush machine is a mechanical nightmare, but the chemical trap at number 10 is sitting right on the shelf of your local auto parts store. Number 10. The universal fluid scam. Walking down the aisle of an auto parts store, you see dozens of different transmission fluids. Right in the center, there's a large, cheap jug labeled Universal Automatic Transmission Fluid. The bottle claims it is compatible with every single make and model on the road. You buy it to save $20, unaware that you purchased a chemical death sentence for your gearbox. Modern automatic transmissions are sensitive, tuned hydraulic computers. The internal clutch plates are manufactured from specific blends of cellulose, Kevlar, and carbon fiber. To ensure these clutches grab without shuddering or slipping, automotive engineers design specific transmission fluids loaded with proprietary friction modifiers. For example, a Toyota transmission requires the slip coefficient of Toyota WS fluid. A Honda requires Honda ATF Z1. A modern Ford requires Mercon LV. These fluids have different chemical viscosities, thermal breakdown limits, and static friction properties. A universal fluid is nothing more than a generic, base-level hydraulic oil packed with a compromised blend of cheap additives that attempts to be good enough for everything. It is the chemical equivalent of a one-size-fits-all shoe. When you pour universal fluid into a sensitive transmission, the internal clutches cannot grip. When the transmission attempts to shift into overdrive, the clutches will slip before grabbing. This micro-slipping generates massive amounts of localized heat, glazing the clutch plates into a hard, glassy surface. Once the clutches are glazed, the transmission will shudder every time it shifts gears, and the entire unit will need to be rebuilt. Always pay the premium for the exact, manufacturer-specific fluid listed in your owner's manual. The fluid chemistry is critical, but the forgotten mechanical component at number 9 is suffocating your transmission in the dark. Number 9. The neglected internal filter. Many owners decide to drain their own transmission fluid in the driveway. They pull the drain plug, let the old fluid pour out, refill the pan with fresh fluid, and consider the job done. They ignore the fact that there is a massive, restrictive mechanical filter bolted inside the transmission oil pan. Older transmissions from the 1990s use simple metal screens to filter out large chunks of debris. You could wash these screens and reuse them. Modern transmissions use dense, woven felt filter elements. These thick felt filters are designed to capture microscopic particles of clutch dust, aluminum shavings, and degraded fluid sludge. Over 70,000 miles of driving, this thick felt element becomes saturated and clogged with black sludge. When you drain the fluid and leave the old filter in place, you are forcing the transmission's main hydraulic pump to work twice as hard to suck fluid through that clogged felt barrier. When the pump cannot pull enough fluid through the restricted filter, a phenomenon known as cavitation occurs. The pump begins sucking air, creating tiny, high-pressure vacuum bubbles that collapse inside the hydraulic lines. You will hear a high-pitched metallic whining noise coming from the bottom of the car when you accelerate. This means the transmission is starving for fluid. Because the fluid pressure drops, the hydraulic pistons do not have enough force to squeeze the clutch packs. The clutches slip, the heat skyrockets, and the transmission destroys itself. All because the owner refused to spend $20 and unbolt the oil pan to change the felt filter. Changing the filter is mandatory, but the hidden thermal flaw waiting at number 8 is the ultimate transmission killer. Number 8. The radiator. Heat exchanger. Flaw. If you ask any professional transmission builder what the number 1 killer of automatic gearboxes is, they will give you the exact same answer: heat. Automatic transmission fluid is designed to operate between 175 and 195 degrees Fahrenheit. According to the Arrhenius equation of chemical degradation, for every 20 degrees the transmission fluid temperature rises above optimal levels, the lifespan of the fluid is cut in half. The massive engineering flaw in modern consumer vehicles is how the factory cools the transmission. Instead of giving the transmission its own dedicated cooling radiator, engineers run the hot transmission fluid into a small heat exchanger located inside the engine's main coolant radiator. This is a terrible thermal compromise. Your engine runs at a blistering 210 degrees Fahrenheit. This means your transmission fluid is heated by the engine's boiling coolant, forcing the transmission to run hotter than its optimal operating temperature. Worse yet, as the vehicle ages, the thin internal metal barrier separating the engine coolant from the transmission fluid can corrode and breach. When this barrier breaks, pressurized engine coolant blasts into your transmission lines. The water and ethylene glycol mix with the transmission fluid, whipping into a thick pink sludge known in the automotive industry as the strawberry milkshake of death. The water dissolves the water-soluble glue holding the internal clutch materials together. Your transmission is destroyed in a matter of seconds. Smart owners bypass the factory radiator and install a cheap $40 aftermarket external transmission cooler. This isolates the fluid, drops the operating temperature by 30 degrees, and eliminates the risk of coolant cross-contamination. If you want to protect your savings from shady service advisors and engineered failures, hit that subscribe button right now. We expose the mechanical truth the dealerships want to keep hidden. The heat flaw is a massive oversight, but the chemical cure sold at number 7 is mechanical poison. Number 7. The stop leak, snake oil. You walk out to your driveway in the morning and notice a small puddle of red transmission fluid under your car. You panic, drive to the auto parts store, and buy a $10 bottle of transmission stop leak. The bottle guarantees to seal any dripping gasket and restore your transmission to perfect health. You pour the thick, syrupy liquid down your dipstick tube, and the leak stops a few days later. You think you saved $1,000. You initiated a slow, irreversible countdown to total transmission failure. Commercial stop leak additives are not magical sealing agents. They do not patch holes or fix broken metal. They are concentrated cocktails of aggressive chemical plasticizers and petroleum distillates. When these harsh chemicals enter your transmission, they seek out the hardened, shrinking rubber seals and gaskets that are causing the leak. The chemicals attack the outer layer of the nitrile rubber, melting it and causing the rubber to swell and expand. This extreme swelling forces the rubber to plug the gap, stopping the leak. But the chemical reaction does not stop there. The plasticizers remain in the fluid, attacking the rubber day after day. Eventually, the seals become so swollen and soft that they lose all of their structural integrity. They turn into a weak, mushy paste. The massive hydraulic pressure inside the transmission blows through these mushy seals. Instead of a slow drip in your driveway, you experience a catastrophic internal pressure blowout while driving down the highway. The transmission drops into neutral, and the internal hard parts grind themselves into metal dust. Never pour chemical seal swellers into your transmission. If a gasket is leaking, you must fix it with a wrench, not a bottle. Chemical fixes are disastrous, but the driving habit at number 6 will burn your transmission to the ground. Number 6, the Overdrive towing trap. You buy a reliable truck or SUV, hook up a heavy travel trailer for a weekend camping trip, and merge onto the interstate. You leave the gear selector in standard drive and set the cruise control at 70 miles per hour. You are generating enough internal friction to melt the internal components of your torque converter. To understand this trap, you must understand the torque converter lockup clutch. At highway speeds, the transmission computer engages a physical clutch inside the torque converter to create a one-to-one direct mechanical link between the engine and the wheels. This improves fuel economy and lowers fluid temperatures. However, when you are towing a heavy, unaerodynamic trailer, the wind resistance is massive. As you drive over rolling highway hills, the engine struggles to maintain speed in the highest overdrive gear. The computer senses this struggle and unlocks the torque converter clutch to allow the engine RPMs to rise and gain more power. A few seconds later, when the road flattens out, the computer locks the clutch again. When you tow in overdrive, the transmission is hunting for the right gear, locking and unlocking that heavy-duty clutch every 30 seconds. Every time that clutch engages and disengages under the massive weight of a trailer, it slips, generating an intense burst of extreme friction heat. Within 20 minutes of this locking and unlocking cycle, the transmission fluid temperature spikes past 260 degrees. The fluid begins to boil. The clutch material inside the torque converter disintegrates, sending abrasive carbon fragments into the delicate valve body. Whenever you tow a heavy load, you must press the tow haul button or lock out the overdrive gear. This keeps the engine RPMs high, forces the transmission to stay in a lower, stronger gear, and prevents the torque converter from burning itself alive. Towing requires respect, but the impatient shifting habit at number 5 will shatter solid steel. Number 5, the rolling shift destruction. We have all done it. You are backing out of a parking space in a hurry. While the vehicle is rolling backwards at 3 miles per hour, you slam the shifter from reverse into drive and hit the gas pedal. You feel a clunk, but the car moves forward, so you assume everything is fine. You committed the ultimate act of mechanical violence against your transmission. Inside an automatic transmission, there is a specialized component called a sprag clutch, or a one-way mechanical bearing. This bearing functions like a ratchet wrench. It allows the massive internal planetary gears to spin freely in one direction, but locks up solid to prevent them from spinning backward. When you shift into drive while the car is rolling backwards, you are taking thousands of pounds of reverse kinetic momentum and slamming it into a mechanical bearing that is designed to hold forward momentum. The sprag clutch is subjected to an unimaginable shock load. The small, angled metal blocks inside the bearing are forced backward against their designed geometry. Do this enough times, and the extreme force will shatter the hardened steel sprags into a dozen pieces. You will hear a loud, metallic snap. The car will lose all forward gears, and you will be left stranded in the middle of the street. An automatic transmission is not designed to stop the rolling weight of a 2-ton vehicle. That is the exclusive job of your brake pads. You must come to a dead stop before shifting between reverse and drive. The rolling shift breaks hard parts, but the hidden neglect at number 4 destroys the transmission from the bottom up. Number 4, the pan magnet, saturation. If you were to unbolt the oil pan from the bottom of your transmission, you would find a small, square, flat ceramic magnet sitting by itself in the corner of the metal pan. This tiny magnet is the unsung hero of your entire transmission, as the massive steel planetary gears and hardened metal clutch drums mesh together over thousands of miles. They shed microscopic, razor-sharp shavings of ferrous metal. These metal shavings float through the hydraulic fluid like tiny daggers. The sole purpose of that pan magnet is to attract and trap these floating steel shavings before they can get sucked into the main hydraulic pump. However, this magnet has a maximum physical capacity. By the time a vehicle hits 80,000 miles, that flat magnet is saturated. It becomes covered in a thick, fuzzy layer of gray metallic sludge. It looks like a metallic Shia pet. Once the magnet is saturated, it cannot hold onto a single additional metal shaving. When the gears shed more metal, those razor-sharp steel flakes bypass the useless magnet, bypass the felt filter, and get sucked into the aluminum valve body. The valve body is the central brain of the transmission, filled with sensitive, precision-machined spool valves that control fluid pressure. When sharp steel flakes get jammed between a moving steel valve and a soft aluminum casing, they act like coarse sandpaper. They score and scratch the walls of the valve body. These deep scratches create massive internal pressure leaks. The valves begin to stick, causing harsh shifts, delayed engagement, and total transmission failure. When you drop the pan to change your fluid, you must remove that magnet, wipe it clean with brake parts cleaner, and reinstall it. The magnet catches the metal, but the temperature trap at number 3 blows out internal gaskets in the dead of winter. Number 3, the cold start. Viscosity abuse. It is the middle of January. The temperature outside is 20 degrees below freezing. You jump into your freezing car, start the engine, shift into drive, and accelerate down the street to get the heater to warm up faster. You are pushing your transmission fluid to the breaking point. Transmission fluid is a complex oil, and like all oils, its physical viscosity changes based on temperature. At normal operating temperatures, the fluid flows like water, navigating the microscopic, hair-thin hydraulic passages inside the valve body. However, at extreme sub-zero temperatures, that exact same fluid thickens. It takes on the heavy, sluggish consistency of cold maple syrup. When you rev the engine after a freezing cold start, the main hydraulic pump begins spinning at high speeds. It attempts to force this thick, syrupy fluid through the tiny hydraulic channels. Because the thick fluid cannot flow fast enough to escape, the internal hydraulic line pressure spikes to terrifying levels, exceeding 300 psi. This massive abnormal pressure spike searches for the weakest point in the system. It finds the delicate, paper-thin separator plate gaskets hidden deep inside the valve body. The extreme pressure blows the gaskets out of their channels. Once those internal gaskets are blown, fluid crosses over into the wrong hydraulic circuits. The transmission computer becomes confused, applying 2 opposing gears at the exact same time. The transmission binds up and destroys itself. You must allow your vehicle to idle for at least 60 seconds on a freezing morning, and drive with caution for the first 3 miles to allow the thick hydraulic fluid to warm up and thin out. Cold oil is dangerous, but the computer reset failure at number 2 causes freshly serviced transmissions to self-destruct. Number 2, the adaptive learning ransom. You decide to do everything right. You drop the transmission pan, clean the magnet, install a brand new felt filter, and fill the transmission with the exact premium manufacturer specified fluid. You drive the car down the street, and the transmission slams into second gear hard enough to feel like you got rear-ended by a truck. You assume the new fluid destroyed your transmission. You fell victim to the transmission control module adaptive learning trap. Modern transmissions are controlled by an intelligent computer. As your old transmission fluid degrades and your internal clutch packs wear down over the years, the computer monitors the time it takes for the gears to shift. To compensate for the worn-out fluid and thinning clutches, the computer increases the internal hydraulic line pressure. It forces the system to push harder to ensure the slipping clutches still grab in time. When you drain out the old, weak fluid and pour in thick, fresh fluid loaded with brand new friction modifiers, the transmission has massive gripping power again. However, the computer does not know you changed the fluid. It is operating on the old adaptive memory. It commands the hydraulic pump to deliver maximum high-wear line pressure to a system that no longer needs it. The fresh fluid and the extreme high pressure combine to slam the clutches together with terrifying force. This harsh shifting will shatter the internal hard parts within a few hundred miles. Whenever you perform a major fluid service on a modern transmission, you must use a professional bidirectional scan tool to access the transmission control module and command an adaptive learn reset. This wipes the computer's memory back to factory zero, allowing it to relearn the shift timing with the new fluid. The computer reset is critical, but the ultimate secret to transmission longevity lies in a specific, mathematical fluid exchange process engineered by the greatest transmission builder on Earth. Number 1, the Japanese 3x3 trick, the Aisin secret. Reaching the summit of our mechanical breakdown, we expose the guarded Japanese engineering secret that guarantees a transmission will outlast the vehicle it is bolted to. If you look at the most reliable vehicles in automotive history, the Toyota Land Cruiser, the Lexus LS400, the early Toyota Tacomas, they all share one distinct advantage. They do not use generic transmissions. They use legendary gearboxes built by Aisin Werner, a Japanese manufacturing giant owned by Toyota. Aisin builds the most indestructible automatic transmissions on the planet. However, their engineers knew that dumping 100% of the old fluid out of an aging transmission at once was dangerous. Replacing the fluid shocks the valve body with massive amounts of harsh new detergents and washes away the vital friction varnish that worn clutches rely on to grip. To solve this, Aisin engineers utilized a mathematical fluid replacement strategy known in the industry as the 3x3 method. Toyota dealership mechanics used this protocol for decades, until corporate marketing buried it in favor of the lifetime fluid lie to sell more cars. Here's how the secret works. You never drop the transmission pan or hook up a flush machine. Instead, you locate the simple drain plug on the bottom of the transmission. An average automatic transmission holds 12 quarts of fluid in total. However, when you pull the drain plug, only 3 quarts will fall out. The remaining 9 quarts are locked deep inside the massive torque converter and the complex valve body. You pull the plug, drain those 3 quarts of old fluid, and pour exactly 3 quarts of fresh, manufacturer-specific fluid back into the dipstick tube. You have not shocked the system. You have introduced a 25% mixture of fresh fluid, new friction modifiers, and clean detergents into the aging system. You then drive the vehicle for 500 miles. During this time, the fresh fluid circulates, cleaning the valve body without dislodging massive, dangerous chunks of varnish. After 500 miles, you repeat the exact same process. Drain 3 quarts, fill 3 quarts, drive another 500 miles. You perform this drain and fill process 3 times. By the end of the 3rd cycle, you have cycled out 75% of the old, degraded fluid and replaced it with a stable, clean mixture. You restored the transmission's hydraulic integrity over 1,500 miles without shocking the internal seals, without washing away the clutch friction material, and without triggering the adaptive learning trap. This gradual mathematical fluid transition is the ultimate mechanical cheat code. It is the reason why vintage Japanese vehicles clock 400,000 miles on the original factory gearbox. The automotive service industry relies on your fear of complex hydraulics and your desire for quick, one-stop solutions. They bury simple, gradual maintenance routines behind expensive flush machines, and sealed for life warning labels to extract your wealth when the unit inevitably fails. Stop acting as a passive consumer in the service lane. Look past the shiny, quick lube advertisements, ignore the factory lifetime promises, and focus on the slow, methodical science of hydraulic preservation. Hey, thanks for watching. If you found these transmission hacks helpful, let us know in the comments below. Want to see the exact 5 hidden signs your engine timing chain is stretching before it snaps and destroys your valves? Click the link to check out our other diagnostic guides. And if you do not want to miss more money-saving tips and mechanical secrets, hit that subscribe button right now.